Hello. Hello, YouTube channel. Let's let the other folks catch up over here. Are we rolling? Are we rolling? Yes, looks like we're rolling. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the new episode of Comic Shop Talk, brought to you by Black Cat Comics in Rockin' Milpitas, your one-stop shop for all things superhero. I'm here during our new comic hiatus, during your shelter-in-place, just to bring a little comic book community, a little bit of fun, a little bit of something else. Your all things comics. Let's talk about what you're reading in your downtime, all those good things. One thing I've been talking about, well, let me back up just half a sec. It's a lot going on in comics, and everybody's concerned about comics and comic stores and the future of new comics and all these kind of things. I don't have answers to what the publishers are going to do. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have any of those things. What I do have is a comic shop, and it's a shop full of comics. And so all I can do is keep moving forward, keep bringing you guys fun stuff to read, which is what I've always been here doing, what we've always been here for. Comics are fun. Comics are entertainment. So what I've been trying to do is highlight all the things that are out there in the world of comics that you guys can be reading, that you might not currently be reading, that you might not currently be into. I've got a whole bunch of different stacks of stuff back here to talk about for folks that are, you've been around a long time, you're well-versed in the world of comics. There's a lot of things that you can do to shake things up, make it new, fun, and exciting. Maybe you're sheltered in place with somebody that isn't into comics, doesn't know anything about comics. Maybe they're getting interested, maybe they're getting bored. Well, I've got 1,000 things that you can do, that they can do to have fun enjoying comics as well. What's up, Brandon? And so I always like to start with, first and foremost, so you guys don't think this I'm just badgering you to sell things. Of course, I want to sell things. Of course, I'm in business. I want you guys to go to black-cat-comics.com, click on shop, buy all kinds of fun stuff. But that's not why I'm here. That's never been why I'm here. I'm here just to help you use my experience in 40 years of having fun with comics so you can have more fun with comics. So don't think I'm trying to sell you anything. I'm just talking, and we're all just sitting around having a comic shop chat. So first and foremost, catch up on the stuff that you already have. First and foremost, every week, everybody's picking up their new books and they're telling me that they're not caught up on what they read last week or what they picked up before, whatever have you. First and foremost, read the stuff you have. Catch up on your current books. So when new comics start again, you'll already be ready for the next issue of your favorite stuff. Number two, go back and read some of your favorite stuff. We all hoard boxes and boxes of this stuff. We all have our favorite books. Go back and read some old Spawn. Go back and read some John Byrne X-Men. Go back and read whatever it was that you love in your stash, because you have boxes and boxes of comics. What are they sitting there for except to be reread, reloved, and re-enjoyed? I reread my books all the time. I got a spin rack in my reading room with a lot of my favorites that I've read 100,000 times. As I say a lot, rereading your favorite stuff is a big part of having a comic collection. Number three, organize. Rebag and board, or bag and board, or box it up, or label those boxes, or do whatever you got to do to make your collection accessible and usable and fun. I switched out all my stuff to the drawer boxes and the box frames like we have here. And I'm so glad that I did, because when I want to read a book, I walk into the room, I open the box, I pull out that book, and I read it. Organizing my 100 and something long boxes of books is one of the best things I ever did for my collection, and I enjoy the heck out of it. I hope this doesn't seem a little weird. I'm just this kind of talking head. I'm not much to look at, so I set this up so you'd have as many comic books to look at as you can. So I hope that's more fun than just looking at the top of my head. So like I say, without getting into encouraging you to buy anything, I encourage you to read the things you already have. Read your current books, read your classic favorites, organize your stuff, bag, board, label, do all those things, make your collection work for you, because that's a big part of the fun is the functionality. So there's all of those things. Like I say, you can go into your comic room right now and have hours and hours of fun. You can probably read through the duration of this apocalypse with the books that are already in your stash, and you know they're going to be fun because you already bought them and read them and loved them. So that's all great, and really, like I say, there's more than enough probably going on in your own stash to keep yourself having hours of fun. Okay, so maybe you're one of those incredibly rare comic people that has read all their current stuff, that has recently reread all of their favorite classic stuff, and all of your stuff is organized, bagged, boarded, labeled, and ready to go. Now what, Kazi? Now I've got no new issues of my favorite books, so how do I keep having fun with comics? Well, comics have been around for at least 80 years. There are different eras. There are decades and decades of stuff. There are tons and tons of different publishers, both former and current. There are dozens, hundreds, thousands of universes yet to explore. So if you truly love comics like I do, then there's a million ways that you can get out there and have some fun. Before I get into my samples, I'll give you a couple of anecdotes along this point. As I mentioned in the newsletter this week, if you've been around comics a long time, you have explored a different universe. If you're into comics at all, you've already explored and fell in love with one universe at least. And if you've been, you're very welcome, Michael. Thanks for joining me. If you have been around comics a long time, you have gotten yourself into more than one universe, and I'll give you several examples. I'm a born and raised Marvel guy. Everybody knows I'm a born and raised Marvel guy. Stan Lee is my lord and master. And in 1986, DC went and absconded with all of my favorite guys and redid their universe. And of course, I'd been reading some DC. I read Superman, I read Green Lantern, I read Justice League. That's what I did when there were no Marvel books on the spin rack, but I wasn't really into the DCU. But when they grabbed John Byrne to do Superman and Frank Miller to do Batman and on and on and on I could go, I was like, well, I guess I'm checking out some DC comics now. And they had all the new number ones. You know, I'd never had a chance to read Flash #1 before. So I dove in and I picked up all that post-crisis DC stuff, and I came to love a whole new universe. And even though I could keep right on loving all my favorite Marvel books, now I had a whole new universe to enjoy, and all these great new characters to read about, and new creators to learn about, and all that good stuff. Then a few years later came the 90s, and the big two were, I don't know what word I'll use, so I'll just keep talking. And I got introduced to, I wanted to get away from some of the things that I had been reading because they weren't blowing me away. And that's when I got into Valiant. And Valiant was so awesome, and it changed my life because I was introduced again to new characters, new creators, a whole new universe. And that sent me into old characters and old publishers and old creators and all that, which was such a treat. And I can't say enough about how much fun I had in the 90s getting to know all the Gold Key characters like Magnus and Solar and Turok, and reading all those classic Silver Age comics. And then I was loving all the new comics because it was some of the top talent of the day, Frank Miller, Walt Simonson, all those guys. And that was super great. And then I jumped to Dark Horse, and here's Hellboy, and yeah, Ultraverse. Here's Hellboy and Madman and Sin City and all that stuff that was coming out of Dark Horse in the 90s. You know, Sin City, I'll give you a different example. Stray Bullets. Stray Bullets came out, and Stray Bullets should have been, I had no reason to read that book, not in any kind of bad way, but I'm a superhero guy, and Stray Bullets is a black and white crime book. I don't read black and white comics. I'm not big on crime books. I read Sin City because it was Frank Miller and it was awesome, but, you know, it could have stopped there. But I picked up Stray Bullets. It changed my life. Now, all of a sudden, I'm reading black and white crime books. I'm reading Hellboy. I'm reading Madman. I'm reading Valiant stuff. I'm sticking with my Captain America. And I was having a great time. And so that's my long way of saying that right now, this hiatus of new comics is an opportunity. Don't bum out and don't cry that the sky is falling and all these kind of things. Just take an opportunity to expand your horizons and check out something new, cool, and exciting. So let me give you a little example of what I'm talking about. Dun, 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 dun. So, you know, you don't know what you do. You don't know what to do. You don't know what to read because there's no new Captain America. What am I going to do in my life without a new Captain America? Well, this is Strange Adventures #1. This is a new first issue from DC Comics. Okay, so an introductory person can pick up this book just because it says issue #1 on it. When they read this book, they will discover two things: the artist, the writer, and the main character. And from reading this, if this book is really super awesome, which it is, if you read this and you really love it, you will say to yourself, I want to read more things from this writer, this artist, and more things about this character. And now all of a sudden you're checking out awesome stuff from Tom King. You're checking out all kinds of different eras of stuff with Adam Strange. Adam Strange has had books from all the different ages of DC, and lots of great and awesome stuff. But like I say, you're reading along and you're like, this guy, Tom King, is really cool. What else has he done? Oh, he's done a book called Mr. Miracle. My guy at the comic shop said this was the best book of the year. My guy at the comic shop loves Mr. Miracle and talks about this all the time. Okay, so I read Strange Adventures. I love that. Now I'm reading Mr. Miracle, and I'm freaking loving Mr. Miracle, and which would send me in another couple of directions, which sends me off to, who is this Mr. Miracle guy? Where's he come from? Oh, maybe I should check out Mr. Miracle from Jack the King Kirby, the original writer artist of the character of the whole New Gods thing. Now, just because you picked up the first issue of Strange Adventures, now you've turned yourself on to Adam Strange, and now you've turned yourself on to classic Mr. Miracle, which turns you on to Jack Kirby, which opens you up to the entire everything of all time. If you, for some reason, you didn't know who Jack Kirby was, now you're reading the New Gods, you're reading Demon, and you're reading Fantastic Four, and now you're finding out who Stan Lee is, and blah, 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 blah. So, just because you picked up Strange Adventures and enjoyed the heck out of this $3.99 comic, now you're into a whole new world of stuff. Mr. Miracle, you're reading Tom King's Batman, you're doing all kinds of things from all the different eras just because of one super awesome first issue. And you can do that with all kinds of things. Here's some other first issues. You hear about some Disney Plus, Falcon and Winter Soldier. Here's Falcon and Winter Soldier #1. You pick this up, you think it's cool. You go back, you read some other Falcon books, you read some other Winter Soldier stuff. Spider-Woman just got a new title. Maybe you're a DC person and whatever, so you pick up Spider-Woman #1 for something new, different, fun, exciting. Now the same thing's going to happen. You can pick up some Brian Michael Bendis Spider-Woman. You can pick up some classic Spider-Woman from the 70s. You can pick up all kinds of Spider-Woman. And the same thing works with Wolverine #1. You don't have to have read a million years of Wolverine. You don't have to know how many times he's died and come back or how many kids he has. You just pick it up because it's #1 and you think it's awesome, and so you read more from that writer, that artist, more on this character, other X-Men stuff. You hear about a movie like Suicide Squad, so you track down a new Suicide Squad. All these books that I'm showing you are very recent, brand new titles, new series that you could be jumping into just for the heck of it. And if you like them, you keep reading, you get sent off in all these other directions, and you keep reading other stuff. And that's just super fun. While I'm here, for the established folks, you might say to yourself, well, you know, I passed up on that Leviathan thing. Maybe I'll check that out. Leviathan Dawn, the second of these series that's been rolling out. I myself love Bendis, like everything comics. People, it's always a love-hate thing. I think he does really great characterization and dialogue. I don't want to spoil too much about this, but the reveal of Leviathan for us old guys was really awesome. So anyway, like I say, if you're a DC guy, you're caught up on your stuff, pick up a mini that you might have missed. Pick up an event that you might have missed. If you're a Marvel person, you're an indie comics person, whatever, you can grab a first issue just because it's a first issue. I always say it's their job to make you love it. It's their job to make you keep reading it. It's not your job to like it just because you paid the $5. Incoming is my other thing. Event books are always fun. Event books don't require a lot of commitment or a lot of knowledge about a lot of things. Again, if you're a DC person, you're a whoever person, and you're bored, you can pick up any first issue, and you're gonna say to yourself, "Hey, that character is interesting. I want to see more from that character. Hey, that writer was pretty good. I want to read something else from that writer. Hey, that artist was awesome. I love the way he did Captain America. I want to read more from that." And like I say, I've got all kinds of stacks here of all kinds of examples that you can be doing, things you could be checking out, ways of jumping into new titles, ways of turning yourself on to new stuff, ways just to pass the time because you love comics. all sorts of things you can do during this hiatus. So this is the part. Francie is at her other job, her real job. She's out there saving the world, so she couldn't be here. If she was, that's the part where she's tugging on my arm saying, let somebody else talk. So throw them at me. Give me some questions. Let me know what you're reading. Let me know how you're passing the time. Let me know what's going on during this comic hiatus. Questions, comments, concerns, or shall I just keep going with more examples of fun comics and fun things to do? Anyone? Bueller? All right, then I'm just going to keep rolling. Let's talk about these 100-page giants. I love me these 100-page giants. I mentioned this one, From Beyond the Unknown. Adam Strange again. I mentioned this in our newsletter, and because much like Strange Adventures, this is a great example of everything that I'm talking about right now. These 100-page giants are excellent for the folks who are just getting into comics or who have never been into comics. They're excellent for us old schoolers who think we know everything about everything. There are, as it says here, what's this one? 6 action-packed stories with all kinds of different characters going on. There's new stories, there's classic reprints. You don't need to know anything about any of these characters to enjoy this book. There's a Kamandi story in here. You read the Kamandi story. You don't need to know anything about Kamandi, but you read the Kamandi story and you're like, hey, this is really cool. And the same thing happens to you that happened with Strange Adventures. You go back and you find other Kamandi stuff, and that leads you back to Jack the King Kirby because it's awesome. Adam Strange is in here. There's an old team up, an old Brave and Bold of Superman and, or is that DC Presents? Marcus, help me out. DC Presents Superman and Adam Strange. So like I say, you can pick up these 100-page giants. You don't have to know anything. It doesn't have to take you anywhere. It's just a bunch of great stories with great art, great comics, and that's what it's all about. If you read this one and you love it, you can keep reading them. If you read this one and you say, oh my gosh, all 6 of those stories were trash, well, then put it back and pick up Wonder Woman number 750 or Flash number 750 or the Robin 80th anniversary, much like the 100-page giants. Something that has always been true as I turn around, here's X-Men 100, right? Anniversary issues, and again, my man Marcus will back me up on this. The whole point of big double-sized comics like this are to do what those 100-page giants do. If you've never read The Flash in your life, you can pick up a big old anniversary issue, and they're going to explain 100 reasons why you should love The Flash. If you've never read Wonder Woman in your life, you can pick up number 750, and they're going to give you a bunch of reasons why you should keep reading Wonder Woman. They're going to show you why it's been running for 750 issues, why it's going to run for another 750 issues, pandemic or no. Anybody, old school fan, new school fan, anybody that likes to look at pictures can pick up one of these big giant anniversary issues and enjoy a lot of really good reading because that's just fun stuff. And like I say, it's their job to explain to you how we got here. It's not your job to have read 749 issues. It's not your job to have read 99 issues of X-Men. It's your job to look at that cover and go, that's awesome. And you buy the book and you read it and you love it and you keep reading it. Again, that's how comics has always been. It's kind of how comics will always be. Let me talk about some very recent trade paperbacks. Again, I'm totally mining from like this last week, the week before, because you don't have to dig that deep. You just scratch the surface and it takes you down an awesome rabbit hole. What's up, Emo? Everything's going great. Welcome to the show. Once in Future is another great example of what I'm talking about. This is a book from Boom Studios. As I said, back in the 90s, I was getting a little tired of what the big two were putting out. And so I was desperate to look around for a new publisher. And in the absence of big two going on right now, or again, if you're looking for something, Boom Studios does a ton of great stuff, And this one, Once in Future, there's a trade paperback of 1 through 6, just came out last week or the week before. You read this book, you love it, you'll keep reading the issues, or you'll wait for the second trade, or whatever it is. Again, you don't have to know anything about anything. It's its own self-contained universe, and it's awesome. So that's something new, cool, independent, just to grab a trade at random. Another rad trade that came out just a couple days ago, or last week, week before, was JLA The Nail. This is a new printing of a classic book. This book is super, super awesome. It is one of the high points of 90s comics. It is one of the reasons Alan Davis is one of my all-time faves. It's one of those Elseworld stories, but it's probably a Justice League story you haven't read. Like a lot of things I'm talking about, there are all kinds of Justice League stories even I haven't read. I'd be willing to bet there are Justice League stories even some of my big-time DC guys like my man Marcus haven't read. And The Nail is one that you're going to want to check out. It's really, really cool. The premise is that that Superman ain't around because Ma and Pa didn't find the rocket because their truck got a nail in it. So The Nail. And it's really awesome. And again, a brand new trade paperback that you can pick up. Enjoy a story you probably haven't read before. New Mutants, Volume 1. Is the newest volume of the first collections of all this new X-Men stuff that's going on. Everybody's loving all the new X-Men stuff that's going on. You're a DC person and you keep hearing people go, oh, X-Men, 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 X-Men. Well, now you can pick up a trade and see what all the hubbub's about. And again, maybe you read it and you say, hey, this is really awesome. I want to keep reading New Mutants, or I want to check out other of these X-Men relaunch books like X-Force or X-Men or Cable or whatever have you. Awesome. That's the idea. Or maybe you read it and you say to yourself, yeah, this is why I read DC Comics. That's great too. But like I say, this is an awesome time to check something out. And again, just want to pick up some recent books to show you how the rabbit hole works. You pick up New Mutants, suddenly, if you love the book, then you pick up the original issues and you keep going on the run. Or like I say, maybe you're motivated to just go check out other X books, other fun stuff. And last but not least, well, it's never not last but not least, but one of the last piles that I have here are those classic things. What I've got here, this is Essential Aliens from Dark Horse Comics and Essential Predator, also from Dark Horse Comics, because they're awesome. Again, just for something fun to read. If you're a sci-fi fan, if you're any kind of fan of anything, great stories, great art that you don't have to know anything. Big old chunky book. Take you a long time to get through this one. A couple of weeks of pandemic will be just fine if you got some Alien and Predator to plow through. And all the publishers do these things. I wanted to show these two because it's a great example of something non-superhero and something non-Marvel DC. Do you think the climate of comics is changing for the better towards small publishers because of changing aspects of large companies? That's an excellent question. I think the climate of comics is always changing for the better toward the small publisher. It's really interesting. Boy, that's a loaded question. Yes, first and foremost, it's an easy answer to say yes, everything about the industry favors the small publisher right now. Aside from the fact that, print and distribution is an ever more archaic sort of medium, people love comics and I think the movies, what am I getting at? Trickle down is what I'm getting at. The smaller companies enjoy the benefit of everything that I'm talking about. And when people get into the movies and when people get into Spider-Man, when people get into X-Men, they discover those creators and they discover comics. And when they discover comics, then they do what I've been talking about. They get into Valiant and they get into Dynamite and they get into Dark Horse and they get into Image and all those things. But it's a slippery slope. It's an interesting precipice because my concern for the future of the small press is what no one really likes to admit is without the big two, there is no market for the other guys. I can't be open. My store can't be open without the big two. That's just how it is. That's just the reality of it. There are a lot of comic shops that are very strong in independence and a lot of comic shops that sell a lot of independent comics. But I would find it hard to believe that they could survive entirely if Marvel and DC closed up shop. Without people coming into the shop to pick up their Spider-Man, they might not get exposed to all these other publishers. So I think it's a great time for indie comics, but I think all of comics is always really fragile, and we're seeing that right now. So thanks for the question. I appreciate that. Anyone? Dun, dun. Which brings me to another thing. I'm on the internet like everybody, and I see a lot of the the comments and the different things that are being made about shops and what's going to happen to shops and people going digital and all this kind of stuff. And my name, I'm Mark Kazi from Black Cat Comics in Rock and Milpitas. Nobody knows what the future is. Everybody's going to come out of this a little different. The industry is going to come out of this a little different, but I think if we all hang together and support our love of comics, I think everything will all survive. Demonic is asking, do I think changes in the tide of comic artists, creators themselves? I'll say this about comics in general. My store's been open almost 18 years, and I make it up as I go along every single week. And that's just how it is. That's what it's like being in business. That's what it's like. One thing I've talked about a lot here in the store on many levels and many topics is the place where business and art meet. And that is a very, very, it's like two of the same kind of magnet, he says, with a lack of science. They want to touch, but they can't. So I think everybody from the artist and the writer, all the way to Jim Lee, is making it up as they go along. And you need to find your thing and do it and make it stick. That's really all I can say. This whole industry is built on sand. And like I say, we've all just been sort of making it up as we go along. And that's how we're going to get through it. Me doing my best to be here, and you guys helping me stay here. And so, like I say, and to that point, again, it's just about reading comics and loving comics and how much we all love comics and want to support our local store, want to support our publishers, all that good thing. But like I say, right now at this point, I think from the penciler to the publisher, nobody really knows how this is all going to work out. But again, I see the comments and I see, the positives and the negatives. I don't pay too much attention to any of the negative talk. I just appreciate all you guys who are out there spreading the good word, being positive about your love of comics. Because like I say, that's what keeps anything alive. And so we'll keep going. Every week I'm here putting out my video. We do. I haven't done a podcast in a while because I'm kind of switching to this live format. But every week I do a video. I talk about all the different books, all the different publishers that roll out, all the different creators, as many different things as I can. Kind of like I'm showing you now, because the point is that every single week there's new things to get into, new things to enjoy, or at least something to grab onto and follow the path to one of these great classics. As I turn around, here's another one, Planet of the Apes from Boom Studios. While I'm talking about the essential Alien and Predator, let me not leave out my original favorite sci-fi franchise. Boom Studios has done a fantastic job with all this Planet of the Apes stuff. So I can't encourage you enough. If you're any kind of apes fan, any kind of sci-fi fan, again, look for something non-superhero. And as I say, I can do that with any book back here. I can give you 100 reasons why you can get out of the I don't want to say rut, but that's a word that comes to mind. Why you can get out of your pattern and find something new, fun, and exciting to keep up with your love of comics. Okay. So someone's asking about the books that I have back here. So these Hulks right here. That's Incredible Hulk 104, Incredible Hulk 109. At the moment, no, they're not currently up on the website, but they will be. That's sort of been my full-time job. Francie's working hard, getting all the modern comics and all the trades and all the merchandise up on the store. I'm working hard to get all the old books on the shop up on the website. I put a few of them up today. I'm working right now just on like the keys and the coolest stuff. And I know when you go there, you'll see like a bunch of comics that are like $99. I'm not trying just to do that. I'm just trying to get my best stuff, my high grade stuff, my keys, the fun stuff that you guys are going to want to get. I'm trying to get that up first, but I'm putting everything up as fast as I can. So keep checking back with black-cat-comics.com. Click on shop, search for gold, silver, bronze, and soon all these books and many, 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 many others will be up there. Appreciate your patience. Storm, how has it been to see small publisher? You know, I'm all for, okay, so Moss asked me, how has it been to see a small publisher become a full leader in the industry of comics? Well, I think for most of us, that's been most of their life at this point. I grew up in a Marvel DC world, and it's kind of returning or briefly returned to a Marvel DC world. But I think much like Fox on TV, though Lord knows I don't want to talk about Fox. I think Image came along and definitely cemented themselves as the third of the big three. I think initially Dark Horse was that, but Image kind of overtook them, at least in my mind. And so I've sort of always lived in a 4 to 6 publisher world. I will say really quick, since you bring up the other guys, let me put this out here, like for the record and all official like. I super appreciate, I cannot emphasize enough how much I appreciate Image Comics' dedication to retailers and comic shops at this time. It gets to a little of what I said earlier, that I think they understand that they don't have much of a business model without the comic shops. Yes, they can sell digital and they can sell online, but comic book stores are the access to comics, especially for the indie guys. They don't have big budget movies, and they don't have all kinds of ways for people to get into their stuff. So I think they understand the importance of comic shops, and Image was one of the first publishers to step up and get really super public, encouraging you guys to go to comic shops, go to their websites, buy stuff from their websites, help them out during this time. Like I said, I can't emphasize enough how much I appreciate that, not just for me, but for the industry at large. Again, as I always say, I got into this because I love comics. Nobody gets into this to make money, because that would be dumb. You get into this because you love comics, and I wanted to have a store like the kind of stores I hung out in. I went to Dr. Comics and Mr. Games in Oakland, and loved it. And Mike at Dr. Comics treated me like I was an adult, and we had a great time talking comics, and I made friends and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to have that kind of comic shop. I like to think I am that kind of comic shop. And Image is doing their best to keep me here and keep me going. And so, like I say, as far as industry leader, I have to emphasize that Image really stepped up during this point. So get out there and buy an Image comic. And I say it again on my video every week anyway. If you watch my weekly video, you know I talk up Image and Dark Horse and Dynamite and Boom and IDW and all these guys, because everybody is producing great comics right now. That's what's allowing me to make this video where I can talk nonstop for an hour, because this whole video could be about what Dynamite's doing. You know, I love Red Sonja and Vampirella and the Warlord of Mars stuff and all that. Everything IDW is doing, keeping the 80s going with Transformers and Turtles and all that kind of thing. Like I say, I think it's a great, as I said from the beginning, I think it's a great time for indie comics. It's a big thing that I'm pushing my guys to do. You know, I always pitch Black Cat Comics as your one-stop shop for all things superhero. We're a mainstream comic shop. We're a Marvel DC shop. Every book you see back here is a Marvel DC book. I don't make any bones about that. I'm a Marvel guy. I'm a superhero guy. It's what I love. It's what I sell. It's what I do. But there's a million things to comics besides that. And like I say, especially now in this hiatus of new comics, I'm really pushing folks to be checking out a lot of that other stuff. So you Marvel guys, you DC guys, you everybody guys, pick up an Image book, pick up a Dark Horse book. Again, as I say in the video all the time, I say in the shop all the time, go to the New This Week section of a publisher's website, find a book that you think looks cool and buy that book. That's how comics has always worked. And then it does what I've been talking about. Then you fall in love with that character or that writer or that artist or that publisher, and it sends you on to check out other stuff. So yeah, you know, I think it's a great time for all the other guys, and I think it's those guys that have the most to gain in the future, and the most to gain by taking advantage of whatever it is that the big two decide to do. If the big two decide to go digital only, I think that would be a huge boon for indie comics, and I think it would be a big boon for old school comics. So there you go. Other questions, concerns for your local comic book guy? What's everybody reading in their downtime? What's everybody's favorite title right now? What are you caught up on? What are you trying to catch up on? What's the series that you haven't read that you always wished you had? I'll give you one. I don't like to admit this, frankly. I've never read Sandman. I love Neil Gaiman. I've read his books. I've seen him read live 100,000 times. I'm a huge Neil Gaiman fan, but I've never read Sandman because I have a very short attention span. The idea of 10 trades frightens me. I should be using this downtime to read Sandman, to read Y the Last Man, to read Fables, to read a lot of the great Vertigo classics. That I don't read because I'm too busy watching Captain America save the world. So mine, I guess, would be Sandman. Off the top of my head, as he jumps away from the video, yours should be The Max. One of the Image titles from back in the day, from original Image old school stuff. I just grabbed this one because it's one of my all-time faves, and it's sitting here next to me. If you've never read The Max, this is a great example of what I'm talking about. Is you owe it to yourself to turn yourself on to a new character, a new creator, a new universe, all that good stuff. So I've never read Sandman. Maybe you've never read The Max. Throw a couple of other things out there. What are you noticing now with the trend of comics versus years ago? Do you think conventions have helped bring in new readers? Boy, that's tough. Noticing now okay, that's two separate things. So trend in comics now versus years ago. That's a tough thing because it depends on how many years ago you want to go back. I think comics goes in 5 to 7 year cycles. And what we're seeing right now, I guess the trend in comics, boy, see, it's tough to say because there's so many things going on in comics right now. You know, the big two have kind of a back to basics thing going on right now because they got so far away from it in recent years. The indie guys have been doing a lot of what has kept them going for a while. So I think the current trends in comics are what they have been in recent years. It's about top talent on your top titles, and it's about, you know, always trying to find that next big thing. Do I think conventions have helped bring in new readers? Honestly, no. I think and there are a lot of things in comics I don't like to talk about because I don't want you to think that my disparaging comments seem down on things. Conventions have turned into cosplay events. Conventions are not about buying comics and reading comics. That's just the truth of it. Like I say, I don't mean to be down on anything. I don't want to sound negative about anything. It's just the way that it is. I think the toy show sells a lot of comics, but I go to all the big shows and I see people buying comics, but I think cosplay has exploded in recent years a lot more than readership has. And yes, comic tastes are infinitely more eclectic than they were 5 years ago. Again, allowing me to produce a show like this where I can talk about all kinds of different things because I feel like people are more willing to branch out. 18 years ago when I bought this store, it was either Batman or Wolverine. You read Batman, you read Wolverine. And if you didn't read Batman, you weren't going to read Batman. If you didn't read Wolverine, you weren't going to read Wolverine. And that was just how it was. And now I think, again, thanks to Image, I think people are much more willing to try new things. Darkness, you're going to have to tell me who Tim Harrison is. That's not coming to mind right off the top. No, I don't remember that one. So let's see. Stuff, of course, you know, I'm reading the same stuff, Avengers and Captain America, that I always read, trying to catch up on my Star Wars stuff, trying to catch up on my Justice League stuff. Trying to catch up on a lot of classic stuff. I've been filling a lot of runs with the good old oldies. I'm organizing. I'm doing all of these things that we're talking about when I'm not putting the old books up on the website and I'm not packing and shipping your orders. Go to Black-Cat-Comics and pick up something fun to read. Other questions? Other things you guys are doing in the hiatus? Other things you guys want to see up on the website besides the classic comics? All right. Yes, the movies. Emonix is saying that he thinks that the movies have created new readers. I think that's very true. I think the biggest influence I see is in the young readers. The biggest impact I've seen from the movies, and this couldn't make me happier, is in the kids and in the young people coming in to check out comics, coming in to check out the character that they liked in the movie. I gave a lot of credit to DC Animation for that back in the day, because Batman animated series created whole generations of new fans. Justice League Unlimited introduced them to characters like the Question and Captain Atom and all those cool characters. So that was all really, really huge. I loved being in the store and having little kids come in and ask me for comics with Blue Beetle. That was really great. And the movies work the same kind of way. You know, you see all the kids trick-or-treating as their favorite Avenger. I sell a lot of the Marvel Action, Marvel IDW, Marvel Action books to movie fans. I think Marvel has done 1,000 things right with these movies. And one of the biggest things I think they do is make them all ages appropriate. Yes, there's a level of violence and there's a level of all these things. And yes, there's a lot of criticism about their handling of relationship issues and stuff like that. But any kid, most kids, the kid I was when I was 10 and went to see Empire Strikes Back, that kid can go see the Avengers. That kid can go see any of the Marvel movies. And it's, sorry, let me finish that and I'll come back to you, Darkness. And so, you know, there's not a lot of swearing, there's not a lot of blood, there's not a lot of sexuality. And so parents can go and they can enjoy the movie. Kids can go and they can enjoy the movie. Anybody can go and they can enjoy the movie. And again, I understand that there's things that people can be critical of, but to the point of new readers, I think it was brilliant of Marvel to do as much as, not as much as they could, but as much as they felt necessary to stick to the origin stories, to stick to the source material. They've been very, very faithful to the source material in a relatively all ages, in a relatively PG format. And I think those two things have been huge to bringing in new readers and getting kids into comics. And so that's that. And yes, now getting back to Darkness, you mentioned the kid who collects Spider-Man. That's who Tim Harrison is. Thank you for reminding me of one of my favorite all-time favorite comics. And that is another great example of 100 things that I want to talk about during this time of hiatus of new comics and talking about things to get into. The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man is a backup story. I want to say it's Amazing Spider-Man 243, 245. I don't know, but it's in that Hobgoblin era of Amazing Spider-Man. And I'm old enough to have been picking that stuff off the rack. And like I say, The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man is just a little backup story, and is just a wonderful piece of comics. It's everything that makes comics great. It's everything that makes Spider-Man a unique character in comics. I don't want to say too much about the story because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But like I say, it's just a small little backup thing that makes that issue one of the best issues of Amazing Spider-Man ever made. It is an issue that I have back here from time to time just for that backup. Like I say, the main story is not all that important in the big scheme of things, but the backup story is one of the all-time greats. And as I say, that's a great example of a lot of things I want to talk about. Number one, first and foremost, is the fun of buying vintage comics. Is that any issue matters. Every issue matters. The individual comic matters. You don't have to, just because it's part 6 of 12, you can still read that and take it for its own story. I like to think, any old comic can be purchased and enjoyed for what it is. And any issue of Spider, it doesn't have to be $100 key. I got tons and tons of books back here that are $10, $5. I have them back here just because they're fun to read, and that's a great example. It's also a great example of how a lot of great stories are not collected. If you only read trade paperbacks, you are missing out. 248. I was close. If you only read trade paperbacks, you're missing out on a ton of great content. We just put up a huge run of Marv Wolfman, Jim Aparo Batmans, just about the whole run between 400 and 500. With the exception of Nightfall, just about none of that is in trade paperback. But when I say Marv Wolfman and Jim Aparo, you should be getting on the website right now, getting 5 of those and getting free shipping. Marv Wolfman and Jim Aparo. If you don't know those names, you should. If you do know those names, you should go to the website, buy those books right now. And like I say, the vast majority of that stuff was never put in a trade paperback. I'm sure The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man as its own little story was probably collected somewhere in some sort of best of thing. But generally speaking, other than in the big old epics, there's tons and tons of stuff that doesn't get put. They only put the keys, and they only put the hot books, and they only put the Jim Lee runs into trade paperbacks. They don't do every single thing that's out there. So if you love comics, if you love your character, if you love Batman, you love whatever it is, you owe it to yourself to take a dive into a back issue now and then, and find something that's not collected in trade paperback. And you know, that issue 248 is another example of a book, just like I was talking about. That book is not expensive. It is not key. It is not difficult to find. But if you read it, it's worth 10 times the $5 that you pay for it. And thank you for reminding me that. It's also a big reason why I'm a John Romita fan. I'm a huge John Romita Jr. fan, because again, I grew up reading in that era. I think I was supposed to be scrolling down here. Tony, binge reading Batman. You're a wise man. Batman White Knight. Yes, that's good stuff. Sorry, guys. I wasn't keeping up with it. I don't have my tech person here. I'm trying to one-man this show. Brandon's pointing out that Iron Man was second tier. You're gracious calling Iron Man a second tier character before the movie. Iron Man is you know, I'm a big Avengers guy, but most of my life people didn't really read Iron Man. I used to kind of joke that you could stand in Times Square and ask people who Tony Stark was, and they wouldn't be able to tell you. But now, of course, everyone can tell you. Dun, 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 dun. Do you think Black Label will find a long series the way Vertigo or Sandman? That's interesting. Do I think Black Label will produce long-running titles? Honestly, I'll go with no. I don't believe that the industry produces long-running titles anymore, Daniel. And again, I don't say that to be to sound negative or sound whatever. I just think that's one of the huge shifts that the industry has made. I think everything is kind of geared toward. You know, I'll comment. For a long time, since the 90s, things have been written more, you know, the 6-issue, the 12-issue thing, written as a graphic novel. They were taking our comics, what used to be a single-issue, 2-issue medium, became a 6-issue and 12-issue medium so that they could put them in the books and sell the books. And it's still, by and large, kind of that way. But I think it's also sort of coming back to even shorter, where now that's with the digital thing, they're wanting things to be 1 issue, 2 issues, 3 issues. They're not really wanting the 12-issue thing because people aren't going to buy 12 digital things. They want to buy 1, 2, 3. So I think that's how that goes. I should say though, I am loving the Black Label stuff. I love the wide variety of things that they're doing with it. Much like Image, I love any opportunity for top name talent to have free reign to do what they want to do. And Neil's saying it's fun to try and find the old comics you want to add to your collection. That couldn't be more true, Neil. Couldn't agree with that more. As an old schooler, and I don't know if this is as prevalent as it used to be, but again, along the lines of everything that I'm talking about, I read an Avengers book when I was a kid, and I wanted every Avengers book ever. And it took me a long time to put that run together. But when I did, I just started making a list of other runs that I wanted to have. I wanted to have every issue of Marvel Team Up. So I started going around looking for every issue of Marvel Team Up at the shops and at the shows and all that kind of thing. Putting together runs, like I say, might be a little more old school than folks do these days, but it's a ton of fun. It's 50 kinds of fun. Finding the holes, the book that you need. Oh, I need number 53. They have number 53 and it's only $3. Putting those books into the box where they go after you've read them is just a ton of fun. And like I say, I know that gets lost on a lot of folks. There isn't something that people are into because you got to store them and you got all that. But I think picking up these old guys and filling in runs of stuff is the most fun you can have at conventions and at shops. I'm in a comic book store every day of the week. When I'm not here, I get out to some of my favorite other places, like Atlantis Fantasy World in Santa Cruz, California. I bought a lot of old comics from Joe. Love you, Joe. Love Atlantis Fantasy World. I get around to a lot of shops. I go back to my old shop, Dr. Comics and Mr. Games in Oakland. Buy a lot of books from him, because even when you're a comic book guy, you keep buying old books, and that's a ton of fun. Do I think the new con, formerly known as Silicon Valley Comic Con, will be better or the same? Yeah, it's tough to say. I don't know much about shows or who puts them on. I know my friend Steve Wyatt was the original guy who did Big Wow, and when he was doing it, it was a great show. I love the local toy show. I like the Reed Pop shows. I don't know what's going to happen with Silicon Valley. Dun, 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 dun. What else did I miss when I was not scrolling? Hickman is amazing. Dun, dun. Fun stuff. Imanix asked me about character encyclopedias. It's funny that you ask. Here's another little tidbit for you. Here's another great way to have fun with comics. Pick yourself up the original, not the additional, not the expansions, not the later series. Pick up the original official handbook of the Marvel Universe. I would encourage you to pick up, of course, the 15 original issues, however you can. There is a trade paperback if you can dig it up. As a kid, I spent hours and hours and hours reading the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. It is an encyclopedia set where you can look up all your favorite characters and places and everything in comics. Yes, Imanic, DC did one. I think Who's Who is what it was called. Who's Who is the DC version. And again, at that time in my life, I was not so into DC, so I didn't devour the DC one like I did the Marvel one. But it is so much fun. I recently picked up a set all over again because I wanted to reread it. There's a 1 through 12, which lists all the active things going on. There's a 13 and 14, which is the Book of the Dead. And then issue 15 has everybody's weapons and equipment and all that kind of stuff. And I can't encourage you enough to go dig those books up. Because it's a ton of fun. It was super fun to read back in the day because it had all sorts of facts and sciencey stuff, and you finally learned that how many tons this guy could lift, and it gave you some good info for who could win in a fight versus who. And now it's super fun because you can go back and then read sort of like a time capsule of Marvel. And see how much has changed in the ensuing 30 years of continuity. I love those encyclopedia books. Like I say, they were fun then. They're even more fun now. I don't know if other companies have done one. I'd love to see an Image one. I'd love to see an Image encyclopedia with Spawn and Witchblade and Darkness and all that kind of thing. It's fun to go back and read issue 13 and 14, the Book of the Dead, because, you know, of course, most of those characters aren't dead anymore. But yeah, that was great stuff. And, you know, and it's another great example of how over the decades there have been so many different things, from event books and series and all kinds of things that have come and gone, things that were huge, like The Nail, that trade paperback Justice League book that I showed you. Back in the day when the book was coming out, it was huge. 10 years later, all those fans had gone away, and all the new fans didn't know The Nail. Now one of the biggest books in comics is just kind of just another Justice League trade paperback. And that's what happens in comics. Time goes on, you know, and then it's archaeology, and new layers of comics get put over the old ones. And so now at a time like this hiatus, it's just a fantastic time to go back in the time stream and find those books, find the things you missed, the things you forgot about, the things that were recommended to you and you blew them off. Yes, Marvel did stay dead, but we have seen him in about 50 comics since then. He's a lot like Uncle Ben. I always say Uncle Ben stayed dead, but we see him in every anniversary issue. So, you know, as I say, I've talked a lot about all kinds of things you can do to keep yourself preoccupied with the comics. I like to keep this to an hour, so I got just a few minutes to wrap it up. So any last minute questions that you got, go ahead and throw them at me. Any last minute comments. Let me say thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. I'm here for you guys. Again, you know, I'm just trying to keep the comic community alive, just trying to give everybody a place to sit and chat and talk with their local comic guy. I know I talk a lot, but, you know, that's kind of the idea, right? You don't want to be sitting there watching dead air. So share this video with your friends. First of all, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting your local comic shop. Thank you for supporting comics. We are an industry of artists. We are an industry of passionate people. And like I say, I sincerely appreciate you keeping us going and you keeping this industry going, because I've been a fan for a long time. And I want to keep being a fan. So thanks for being here. Help me spread the love of comics. Share this video so that people who are trapped at home can have some fun reading about comics, can maybe get inspired to pick up some comics. Help me get people into comics. You know, Free Comic Book Day was supposed to be around the corner. And that's always my biggest chance to bring in new readers and new fans. So like I say, help me spread the love of comics, help me get some folks into comics, help me help people have fun during these crazy times. Comics are one of the best forms of entertainment there is. If you like to read, if you like pretty pictures, anybody can read a comic. And so like I say, share this video, go to our YouTube page or to the Facebook page and share videos from other weeks. Pick some video at random, see the books that I talk about in that random video, and then check out those books. Let's all have some fun. Remember that I'm going to be here next Saturday. I'm going to be here every Saturday as long as you guys keep tuning in and want to have some fun. So all of that. Last couple of things. He says, Infinite Crisis or Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come is one of the greatest things ever of all time. So as much as I love me some Infinite Crisis on Infinite Earths is one of my favorites. Again, I'm a Marvel guy, so I got to go with original Secret Wars. But Kingdom Come is one of the greatest things ever made. So that's definitely a book that needs to be in everybody's stash in original issue form. Do you have subscriptions, or will you start having them when this is all over? We do have subscriptions. And we will continue having them when this is all over. If you go to black-cat-comics.com, click on subscriber, give us your info, click the titles that you get, and you'll get a bounce back email that says, hey, thanks for signing up. And you can either arrange to have them picked up or have them shipped out to you, whichever you like. And so, yes, we have tons and tons of subscribers. I like to think they're happy people. I like to think that a few of them are watching right now. Thank you very much. All the best to you guys too. So again, Guess I'll wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for loving comics. Keep loving comics. Keep having a positive attitude. Stay healthy. Stay happy. Stay smart. And like I say, catch back up with me next Saturday, 2 p.m. black-cat-comics.com, Black Cat Comics in Rockin' Milpitas. I'm your host, Mark Causey. See you next week.